Stronger runners are more efficient, more resilient, and better prepared to handle the demands of trail running. So today we're talking about how to build the strength and power you need to perform at your best. My guest today is Dr. Shaundre Jacobs, also known as Shawnee, a legendary figure and a sports science lecturer and researcher at the Stellenbosch University in South Africa. Shawnee specializes in strength, conditioning, and fitness, helping runners build strength, power, and endurance without overcomplicating things. Beyond her academic role, Shawnee is an accomplished athlete, both on the track and the trails. Today, we dive into her approach to strength training for runners and how you can use it to level up your performance. Shawnee, welcome to the Trail Chasers.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Starting us off, when you're on the start line of a race, what is going through your mind? How are you feeling? What's the kind of vibe?
Mm-hmm. So to be honest, at the start line, I pray before every race. I pray for safe travel mercies, that I enjoy what I'm doing. I also think about the race profile, because obviously we know if you go out too hard in the first part, you're going to burn out. So I try to just think about my pacing, the race profile, where did they say the one climb will end, at which kilometer, and then just focusing on maintaining the pace and energizing myself. So thinking positive thoughts. I use positive affirmations. You've got this, believe in yourself. So those are the type of things that are going through my mind.
Sure. And this season is sponsored by Gilnockie socks. So we've got these socks, and basically what I'm going to do, I'm not going to put you on the spot now, but at the end of the episode, I'm going to ask you for the 2 words that would be on the back of your sock. So don't think about it too deeply, but just give it some thought. And if we go through kind of, I guess, your life, your journey, what have been the kind of 5 most pivotal moments?
I think for me, the biggest one was when I decided to do sports science. So when I was on school, I made Western Province colours and went all the way up to national. And we had to do certain fitness tests and performance tests. And the first time I did the testing, I saw all these scientists around me taking our measurements. And I was like, what is this about? What can you study this? What is it called? And they said, no, it's called sports science. So I think that for me was like, wow, it opened up my eyes because I love sports and now I could actually study it. And then I went to Stellenbosch University. They had an open day and I went to the sports science department where I actually work now, which is like a whole 360. And I absolutely loved what I saw. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do sports science. So I think for me, in terms of bridging over into an athlete and being a professional, having both sides really helped me a lot, because now I can practice what I preach, but I can also help other athletes. And then I think another highlight was when I became the provincial sports scientist of the whole Western Cape, working with beach volleyball players, open water swimmers, table tennis athletes, runners, footballers, you name it. And it was such a highlight because it's challenging, because now you need to draw up programs for all these different sports, but the principles remain the same. So as long as you bring in the specificity of the sport, you are able to draw up a different program for every sport. So I think those were kind of highlights. Then a low light that turned into a highlight was probably when I hung up my spikes. I was a very competitive track athlete. And then it was kind of, redefining who you are. So creating a new version of yourself, which is quite hard. Because as a small girl, my identifier was, who are you? No, I'm an athlete, track athlete. And then I had to change. And then I moved over to road running for a little bit, but I didn't like it so much. It was a bit, boring. Sorry, road runners.
Yeah.
But then I found trail running. And I think that helped me soften the blow from retiring from track and field into something that's like, wow, what is this? Yeah. Adventuring, trails, downhills, packs. I mean, in athletics, you run with as less as possible. And now in trail running, you have to carry all your water. I remember feeling so upset. Why do I have to carry all this stuff? But I think those are probably the biggest highlights and the transitions that I had to make in my life.
And you obviously mentioned that you're a sports scientist, but if you kind of had a business card for your life, what would it kind of say under your name?
Mm-hmm. So 2 years ago, I created like a private business card, and it said "Beetje zot." and it's Dutch because I can speak Dutch as well because I lived in Belgium. It means a little bit crazy. So it's just like my whole life is about adventures and being outside and being in nature. And sometimes you have to be a little bit crazy to do the stuff that we do in trail running. So I think Betjesot would summarize that quite well.
And, obviously sports science, quite a big field. So is there a particular area you kind of specialize in, and what made you kind of go into that area?
Yeah. So I specialize in strength and conditioning. I think the biggest reason why I stepped into that, well, the first time that I actually was introduced to it was in my second year in fitness class at university at Stellenbosch. The lecturer was talking about all these biomotor abilities, and I was like, what is this? It's like aerobic capacity, endurance, speed training. And I was just like, wow, I love this. And then when we started doing the fitness testing, I absolutely just loved it. And that's where I was captured. And then obviously I worked as a strength and conditioning coach for many years. I started working for Marty's Rugby as a female. Stepping into a predominantly male environment was quite challenging, but I loved the rugby players, and they worked so well with me, and we had a good working relationship, so that was quite good. I worked for them for 5 years before stepping over into football. But I think what's so nice is working with athletes who have these massive goals, and you contribute towards that from a strength and conditioning perspective. I look at strength and conditioning as a protective mechanism. So you help them reach their goals, but it's actually you protecting them from maybe getting injured or, having a long time that they need to sit out because of the injury. So strength and conditioning is something I'm very passionate about. Working with athletes and teams, you're not the most loved person, but you're also the most respected, but also most hated part of the team. But I think they understand it. It's like a love-hate relationship. When they run faster, when they make their PBs, and they come and then they, say thank you for everything. But during the sessions, they shout at you, they scream, they get upset. Sometimes they speak French, you know what I mean? But at the end, they all love it, and they know there's someone that has to push them to their limits. And I think strength and conditioning is such a powerful tool to change someone's life, whether it's for health or performance. We do too little of it in different sports. So I think we need to push more for fitness and health and wealth. Yeah.
And what is the kind of biggest misconception about strength and conditioning?
Strength training, it's mostly that people think if you do strength training that you will become bulky and you will look like a man. I mean, I did athletics at a high level and I did Olympic lifts and I was tiny. So it is just that, you'll become stronger. And that I think is the new trend. Being strong is the new lean, And I think the misconception is there's various different types of strength training goals. There's 4, as a matter of fact. So the one is hypertrophy, and that is to increase cross-sectional size, so it's become bigger. So I think a lot of people think gym is associated with becoming bigger, but it's only one resistance training goal. Then you've got muscular endurance. That is the ability of the muscle to contract muscle contractions, but for a longer period of time. And that is more your endurance type of sports that will benefit from that. Then you get your muscular strength, and that's for more your strength and power sports, to be able to lift at a maximum weight. And then last is your muscular power, and that's obviously where speed component comes into play. But even if you can go through all of them. So for a trail runner, I would always suggest you start off with muscular endurance for the first training block, then you move over into your muscular strength, and then you can move over into your power, but more your power endurance. So you can go through various blocks within them, and I think that's where the misconception is, because people always think muscular hypertrophy. That's one of the goals that you can achieve. If you're a rugby player and you have to be big and you have to be strong, then obviously they will focus more on muscular hypertrophy and muscular strength. But if you're looking at endurance athletes, that's not where the focus is. So you don't have to be big. Strength training is really good for your bones. It's good for your muscles, and also compression forces, etc. So I think people must just move away from that misconception that you're going to, look like a rugby player when you do strength training.
Yeah. And, in terms of it being so important for trail runners, from a kind of sports science perspective, as well as, kind of your lived experience, why is that?
I think a lot of people, they don't know. There's a lack of education in terms of, what are the benefits of strength training. There might be an aspect of lack of access because getting access to a gym, you have to pay for that. So maybe that could be a contributing factor. Also, myself, I love being outside. I love being out in nature. So if I have to go to the gym, it's 1 hour, but it's like you're killing my soul. Some athletes might feel like that. Where if that is the case, then take your training outside. Do it on the grass. You can take a kettlebell. You can take a medicine ball. You can take a bar outside. I feel like hiking is such a good form of strength training because you're using your own body weight and you're going uphill. If you choose the steepest climb, that's actually like power hiking that you're training. So there are limiting factors, but you need to work with your athletes, see what they like, and entice them to do strength training and say, listen, let's test it out a little bit, and then you will feel the benefits, and then obviously you'll get their buy-in. So in working with many athletes, it's not only trail runners, it's football players, it's rugby players. They don't like it, but they know that it adds so much value to their main sport. And that's another thing. You have trail running, which is aerobic, right? You have rugby that might be anaerobic and aerobic as well. Then your strength training is an add value. It shouldn't replace your training. You have your main training program, and then resistance training or strength training is to add value to that to help you perform better. Yeah.
And, what differences have you seen in your own personal kind of running, focusing on those kind of strength and conditioning exercises?
I realized that I am able to sustain for a longer period of time. I'm very good on the climbs. One guy actually ran past me one day, and then I dropped him, and then he shouted, "Why are you so consistent?" It's because you train under fatigue. You push yourself in the gym so that you can, get the benefits and the adaptations when you're out in the mountain. I've also been through a bout where, because of work, there wasn't time to do gym training, because that's the first thing that goes out of the window. If I have to choose, I have 1 hour a day to do training or exercise, I'm going to choose to go outside. But then when you're in a race, you feel it, because you're just like, I don't feel that strength or that power to propel my body up a mountain or into space. Where if you do strength training, you feel the tightness, you feel the strength and your ability to propel forward. So you do feel it, but sometimes I rather don't just want to speak to people about the benefits. I'm like, go and try it out, and then you'll feel. There's also a brief phase where a lot of people, when you start training and doing gym workouts, you'll get what we call delayed onset of muscle soreness. It's DOMS. And a lot of people stop gym training because of that. They're like, oh, is this how you feel all the time when you do gym work? It's just the first few weeks. Yeah. Once you break through that barrier and your body adapts to that training, then it will get better. Obviously, if you increase your weights or you do different movements, the DOMS will come back a little bit, but not as extreme. But I just want to encourage everyone to push through that physical limitation, because the benefits outweigh the challenges all the time if you look at strength training.
And, you did mention about the kind of injury prevention, but there's also kind of like the endurance aspect and the power aspect of it, So how does it contribute to kind of all those kind of things that you kind of do in trail running?
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, strength and conditioning is seen as a protective mechanism. And in all of the articles that we're currently reading is that resistance training is a game changer in terms of performance, and also maintenance of your performance over time throughout a season. So I think the combination of aerobic capacity, so trail running or road running, in combination with resistance training is a protective mechanism. Because now if you want to jump from, 10Ks to 21Ks, your muscles must be able to endure those muscle contractions for a longer period of time. So strength training helps you so that you cramp less, that you bomb less. Obviously, it's a combination of nutrition and hydration that all comes into play. But resistance training really helps just with the ability to move more efficiently. It helps the body just work at you're working hard, but it doesn't feel that hard. And you'll feel the difference the longer you do the strength and conditioning exercises. Yeah.
And, I think one of the things about trail running is, the technical terrain and, you're obviously changing movements and up and down and, that kind of agility and stability. How does strength and conditioning kind of contribute to helping you with that?
Yeah. No, it helps a lot. Like I mentioned, the efficiency of the movement, the muscle contractions. When you're climbing, it's a lot of quad work. So obviously, the quads are working overtime. So if you're doing that in the gym, when you are racing or training, the body remembers that. The muscles remember that. So it's able to create that contractions for a long period of time. Also, when you're doing going downhill, it's a lot of eccentric movements that is happening. So if you train that in the gym, the muscles are able to go through it and that you don't cramp, etc. Also, it helps with the agility. It helps with being nimble. If you do power training or power endurance, it helps to jump off the rocks, jump downhill. So there's a lot of transference that you can have from the resistance training into your trail running.
Yeah. Trail running beats up everything, your legs, your lungs, and especially your feet. The last thing you need is socks that give up before you do. That's why I'm thrilled to announce that this season of Trail Chasers is sponsored by Gilnockie Socks. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill socks. Gilnockie socks are made for people who demand more. More performance, more durability, and more comfort. They're designed to prevent blisters with premium moisture-wicking materials that keep your feet dry no matter how long or muddy the trail gets. Plus, they're treated with HydroCool and Silver Plus, so they stay fresh, breathable, and ready for your next adventure. Since I started using Gilnockie socks, I haven't had to stop mid-run to adjust or worry about discomfort. They just keep working mile after mile, run after run. So why settle for socks that don't keep up? Visit gilnockie.com and use the code TRAILCHASERS at checkout for 20% off your first order. Trust me, once you try them, you won't go back. Your feet will thank you. And going back to kind of the trail running, when you kind of get to a hill, you mentioned that you're quite good with the hills, but are you kind of a runner or a power hiker, or is it kind of, how do you kind of make the distinction, or is it just full gas up the hill?
It depends. It depends. If it's runnable in my eyes and I look at it and I'm like, okay, I looked at the race profile and I remember how long the stint was, then I would run it, but run it very slowly. And sometimes you have to bite a bit, like take the pain. But I don't burst out hard. I kind of restrain myself because I know if I'm going to push hard now, I'm not going to make it till the end. So it takes a lot to just hold back, even knowing at the beginning of the race, or the taper is the deception, because you feel great, but you have to obviously, push it out. If it's very steep, then I choose to climb.
Yeah.
An example like Platteklip, I will just power hike, but very efficiently. I'm very good with listening to my body. So I used to train on heart rate, but now I go on feel, because how I feel is more important. And if I'm doing a climb and I'm feeling I'm overexerting myself, you are out of breath. But if you can't maintain, I always ask myself, can I maintain this for the rest of the race? If I say no, then I'm like, okay, you need to calm down and you need to bring down your pace a bit. I also, when I get to the top of the climb, I rest a little bit more. And then I come out of it in terms of just not a break, just jogging really slow before I open up my stride and start running a bit. So that's like a recovery in the race to recover from the climb.
Yeah, that's actually very good. And, if a beginner wants to start strength training, what are the most important areas to focus on? And how do you kind of get started?
With a beginner, you need to start slowly. I would recommend that you start with your endurance, so your local muscular endurance. That is high repetitions, so it's from 15 to 20 to 25 repetitions, and it's about 3 to 4 sets that you're working on. The intensity is less than 65% of your repetition max. If you don't know what that is, just start off with a lower weight and then you progressively increase it over time. I would say have a mixture of upper body and lower body exercises. A lot of people, they forget that we're using our whole body when we're doing trail running. So for instance, if we're power hiking, you're using your back, you're using your hips, you're using your glutes, you're using your quad, you're using your whole body. So do a combination of upper body and lower body exercises. And then I would say that would be the general phase. Then later on, as you get more proficient in your strength training, you can move to more the specificity phase, as we call it. And then you can do more single leg activities. because you are running on one leg at a time. So it's important to train that as well. So your lunges will come in handy, your single leg squats and those type of stuff. And then I would say progress from own body weight. And then you move to more like power bands and resistant bands. Then you can move to machines. And then later on, you can move to free weights. It's just a good progression so that you don't get injured. The thing that I see mostly is too much too soon. And then athletes get injured and then they hate the gym, But it's just about progressively building building the endurance ability up so that you don't burn out in the gym.
Yeah, it's so important. And when building a running plan or the overall kind of plan, is there a number of strength workouts you should do comparable to your running? Can you do too little? Can you do too much?
So when you start out, it's called a frequency. So obviously you have no adaptations at all. So you need to get that stimulus initially. So I would say the more sessions, the better. But space it out that you have enough recovery. So maybe 2 to 3 sessions. I know in trail running we work, so it's very difficult, to get that much strength training sessions in. But if you can, ideally 2 to 3, but not less than 2. At least 1 then, if you really can't. But at least do something. But ideally then 2 to 3 would help in the beginning phase, the first block. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks for adaptations to occur. So it depends on your periodization that you are using, and then maybe in the next block you can maybe bring it down. If you started with 3, you can move it down to 2, and then in the competition phase, when you're doing races, you want to at least have 1. So that's when you maintain the adaptations that you've built up. So that's why it's so important to build the base in the beginning, and then later on you only maintain what you've built up. It's just to keep the adaptations there, because we have a principle called reversibility. What you don't train, you lose. So you might just lose it if you don't maintain it. So I think starting off strong with more sessions, and then later on you bring in 1 for maintenance, and then the focus is more the trail running because it's the specific phase.
Yeah, it's great advice. And, what's one mistake you see, particularly trail runners, making besides from not doing it? What is the kind of the one mistake you kind of see from trail runners?
Yeah, too much too soon. So they get into the gym and then sometimes they have 16 exercises, 12, 10. It's just too much. It's really, you just need to do a few exercises that are effective because you need to calculate each set. Say if you're doing 15 reps, it's in 3 sets, it's a lot. And you have 10 exercises. It's just too much. Another thing that they tend doing is that they, in periodization, you can have a 3+1. So that's 3 weeks build and then 1 week down. Right? So you decrease your volume. So it's a 3+1. But a lot of athletes every week, they're changing their loading paradigm. So that is also a random approach, will get random adaptations. So you need to progressively overload for 3 weeks. And then the 1 week down is basically your intensity must remain the same, but your volume is decreased. So that you can just give the body a chance to adapt, because you don't become stronger in the gym. It's after the gym. Right? And in your recovery week. So keeping recovery week, recovery. That's probably the most important. And then, just overloading too much in terms of what they're doing, whether it's outside in the running, building up and increasing the intensity too much. And then the last one is probably, I see a lot of programs going around and every session is different. You should have at least, say, 4 core exercises. And those core exercises you build up progressively over a season or a training block. Then you progressively increasing the intensity in that block. Then for variation, you bring in what we call accessory exercises. So that would be your single leg activities or your single joint, one muscle group that you're focusing on. And that will bring in your variation. And that you can vary over time to see that your training is not boring. But consistency is the most important key in terms of your training principles. So if you have every training session a different program, it's a random approach. You need to be purposeful in what you want to achieve. If not, you're not going to get the adaptations that you would like.
When coming back to kind of the trail running now, when that kind of fatigue sets in for you, what's the kind of approach Is it just like soldier on, or do you stop? How do you kind of deal with that?
I'm a bit different. Like I said, a beetje zot. So I did 400 meters. And, any person who's done 400 meters is the pain cave, So it's just about being in the pain. I mean, 400, the sessions that you have is like 5 300s and, 3 600s. It's you live in lactate and you have to get used to it. So in a race, in trail running, when I feel it, I just think about the times that I could have been doing 400-meter training and then I push through. But all jokes aside, I tap into all my senses. So if I am going through a phase where I'm really feeling the pain, I listen purposefully to the birds. I touch the flowers or the plants or the bushes. I kind of focus on what I'm smelling. So I distract my brain from the pain so that I can move through it by focusing on other senses. I know it sounds a bit weird, but yeah, it's a nice tactic that you can use just to trick the brain a little bit. Just like, I'm not in pain. It's just you thinking we're in pain.
Love that.
But yeah.
And when it comes to, training for endurance or training for power, what are the kind of differences, and why is it kind of important to know what are you training for a long run or a kind of quick, easy, short run? Why is it so important to know that difference?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if you're training muscular endurance, it is high repetitions, like I mentioned earlier, 12 to 15 to 20 reps, and it's lower intensity. You have very little rest, and sometimes if you're doing circuit training or HIIT workouts, no rest at all. So the focus is you are trying to tap into the aerobic energy system, and by doing that, it needs to be aerobic. So you're doing resistance training, but you are trying to enhance the aerobic energy system. Then if we're moving over to power, you firstly need to look at your muscular strength. So that is the foundation before you can do power. Because if you look at power, the formula states that you need to focus on the intensity and the speed of the workout. Where do you work on the intensity? In your strength. So you first need a foundation of strength, and then you can move over into the power. Power is a low repetition and then a higher intensity, but the focus is on speed of movement, and it's more your anaerobic components. So if you're training for shorter races, like your 10K, 15, even half marathon, then you are focusing more on that type of anaerobic. There's certain elements of aerobic as well. So I would start off with the muscular endurance, and then I'll build up to muscular strength and then get to power. But if I'm doing 100 milers and, ultras, then I'll stick in the muscular endurance, go back to strength, and then bring it back to muscular endurance as well. So that's what we call sequencing, where adaptations in one block can actually bring adaptations back in another block. It just depends on what the athlete's focus is. So in trail running, the shorter distances are so fast. Yeah. I mean, I used to do the 23K and 21Ks in some of these races, and you are heart rate zone 5. Yeah. I mean, that is pure anaerobic. So you're doing an aerobic sport, but within it, it's a massive speed element. You can't do a 65K or a 55K running that speed. So it's different energy systems that you're training, and the muscle, the ability of the muscle, you need to train in that way to also prepare it for the race. Like I said, strength training is add value. It shouldn't be the focus. The focus is your aerobic training program that you're doing, and that's obviously your long runs, your hill training, your intervals, and all of those.
Obviously, if you are training that endurance, but you do need kind of that explosive power, for the hills, for, like there is kind of those moments even in the kind of long runs. So how do you kind of train that endurance, but bring in like a little bit of that power?
So an example of a session that you can do is doing bounding. So that is focusing on power endurance. So power endurance is where you're focusing on the speed of the movement and the intensity, but there's a bit of a longer rep range. But you need to be very careful with that, because a lot of people, because it is power, you need to exert a lot of force. So you can get fatigue very quickly because you're training the stretch shortening cycle. And because it's a change from eccentric into concentric. So a lot of athletes, as soon as I see their technique is suffering, then I say, okay, we need to stop now because we're training the neuromuscular system. So you can do bounding, you can even do skater jumps and stuff like that, which is very specific to trail running, but then you're focusing on power endurance, not only the strength component. Yeah.
And what is the difference between using, just body weight and adding in machines or free weights?
That is very important. So in strength and conditioning, we have the principle progressive overload. So own body weight is good as a starting point. A lot of people, they go in the gym and they want to start squatting with like 100 kgs and stuff. No, you're going to get injured. Okay. So start off with your own body weight. If you can work with your own body weight and you can do the technique properly and it's effective, every set is good, every rep is good, then you can obviously progress into, a higher weight. Then you bring in elastic bands because it's a form of resistance. So you get different colors that they are, and the one is harder than the other one. So if you can work with that external resistance, then I think you're ready for the machines. And then obviously later on for the free weights. The reason why you want to do that progression is we have your global muscles and they are naturally stronger, but it's the intrinsic muscles that need that stabilization. So if they are not strong enough and the global muscles move too forcefully, if you fall or you're trying to do a very sporadic movement, then your muscles are going to pull and then you might tear a muscle or have a muscle sprain. So the most important part is focusing on the local stabilizers but also the global muscles. And if you do the progressive overload, that's how you help. If you also stick to one weight all the time, you're not going to get stronger. So athletes will reach a plateau and then they'll say, oh, but I'm not getting better. It's because you're not increasing your weight. And some people are very afraid to increase the weight, but just take it. It's going to be uncomfortable in that first time that you do it. But as the body adapts, it will get better and you'll get stronger and then you can move on. So I always make the example to my students, if you're taking a 4 kg weight dumbbell and you're doing, bicep curls, there's a point where your muscle becomes so used to that and then it's just too easy. Now I need to progressively overload and move, but I don't jump to 10. And I move on to maybe 8 kgs. So it depends on the athlete as well. You have what we call responders versus non-responders or slow responders. So some athletes, they respond very quickly to a training program. And others, they take a little bit longer. So that's why you need to have an individual approach to strength and conditioning. Instead of giving everyone the same program, you need to work with what the athlete gives you and then see how they respond to your training program. But progressive overload is so important and people should not be afraid to increase the weights. Obviously, slower increments. So I normally say between 2.5 and 5 kgs, obviously depending on the strength of the athlete. Yeah.
Do you have a kind of go-to strength and conditioning workout, or is it different compared to whatever
it's very different.
You're running?
Yeah, it depends. But like I said, in the general prep is general. You keep all your exercises very basic, very general. You want to work on the stabilizers, get fit, And then as we go into the specific phase, that's my most favorite because now you analyze the sport and then you bring those specific elements in. So my most important part of a workout is obviously doing, mimicking the trail running movements. So single leg activities and stuff, and also training under fatigue. It's really not great and you lie on the floor after the session. But I think single leg activities, we really need to bring that in more. And in the general prep, focus on 2-leg activities. And then as we move to specific prep, bring in single leg.
If you look at the kind of your bucket list, what is on there, I guess short, medium, long term, what are the races or adventures that you really want to do?
Yeah. So my big race that I really want to do one day is obviously the Otter race. All trail runners have a dream to do Otter. So I really want to do that. And then my biggest dream is to run in the Dolomites in Italy. It's been a very long dream of mine. There is a conference held in Italy this year, but I'll need to find research funding to fly over and see if I can, pair it with a runcation and go and maybe do a race there. I think those are probably like the big goals that I would like to achieve. And then every year I like participating in most trail races, but my favorite, as you know, is UTCT because it's just the one race where the whole community comes together and it's just a celebration of, various communities, whether you're in Stellenbosch, in Somerset West, in KZN, everyone comes down here. So I think just to keep growing the community and participating in races for me is quite nice. Yeah.
Have you made a decision on which distance you're going to do this year?
For UTCT?
Yeah.
No comment.
Okay.
I'll need to do an analysis of The 35K was really tough
Yeah.
last year. I'm not even going to lie. There's more vert than kilometers. It is like it's a pain session. What I did right was I held back a lot in the first part, but that's because I was very nauseous going up Platteklip, which I don't know why, but I think it was the heat. It was 35 degrees. And then this last part, I ran super fast. So I think conserving the energy in the beginning by default actually helped me going up our favorite block house and then that last section. But I might go back to the 55, maybe the end of the year, but we'll see. Mm-hmm.
And what are the most common injuries you kind of see in runners, particularly trail runners?
So it's a combination. You have stress fractures. A lot of athletes have a rolled ankle or a sprained ankle, Achilles tendonitis or tendinopathies. Sometimes hamstring strains as well. So I think by doing strength training, it will really help with that. So what we do naturally is just by walking or running, we are training the anterior chain. So that's the front side of the body. We forget or neglect the posterior chain, which is the back side of the body. So when we flex in running, we're using our quadriceps. But when we extend, we're using our hamstrings and our glutes. But if your hamstrings and your glutes are not strong enough, then it's going to tear or it's going to pull. The same with strength and conditioning. If you look at Achilles tendonitis or tendinopathy or, strains of any sort, it is that chronic overuse over time. So I think the most important is monitoring your training load and bringing in recovery methods like sport massage, stretching, foam rolling, and also listening to your body, because otherwise that overload, it's like weeks of load packs up on your body, and then it leads to an overuse injury that could have been prevented or minimized. Acute injuries you can't control, because if you fall in a race, and we've all had that, I just fell yesterday, but that you can't control, but we learn how to fall. And if you're strong enough, if you do strength training, then you fall in a very, fancy way or so. But yeah, I think just doing strength training, like I said, it's a protective mechanism, but monitor your load. See that there's an incremental build up if you're doing a 3-2-1, etc. And then if you feel I'm not feeling good today, then communicate to your coach or you listen to your own body and do something a bit less strenuous. Especially now also with students and life pressure, or you at work, you have a big project and there's a lot of pressure on you. Listen to your body, because your body's stressed by your work. Now you want to stress it even more. Now your body's in this massive inflammatory state because it's life and it's work and training. So I think listening to your body would be a key indicator of the adaptation to load, because otherwise you're going to get injured.
Yeah. And when you kind of feeling sore, is it kind of stop immediately, or is it kind of stop and assess? Is it fatigue, or is it...
So a lot of people think that fatigue is a bad thing. It is good. You need fatigue. Yeah. So discomfort is important, but there's a difference between pain and discomfort. So I also suffer from Achilles tendinopathy. So it means tendinopathy means that it's not swollen, but I feel discomfort sometimes. I go through the discomfort now. But if it's pain, then I know I have to stop. The same if you're in a training session, we have to have painful sessions. You have to feel the burn. You have to go through the lactate threshold. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to push through when you have a race. So we need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and then learning to know, okay, this is now pain. Because pain is a receptor that the body is telling you, whoa, I can't do this anymore. Also looking at your gait, if you're saying it's discomfort, but why am I changing my gait now to adapt? That means, okay, something else is happening. I've got a very good support team in terms of sports science and sport medical. So I would go, as soon as my Achilles starts flaring up again, I go back for my rehab. I keep doing my stretches and my eccentric heel drops, which I'll probably have to do for the rest of my life. But it's just keeping maintenance of your muscle function and your ability. Otherwise, it's just going to pack up one day and you don't feel like you want to do it. And the worst is what I've also picked up. One year I did mostly ultras, and the mental effect that physical fatigue could have is also something that we need to start talking about and opening up that can, because you need to listen to your body. Otherwise, it's going to manifest mentally, and then you just feel like you don't have a desire to train anymore, lack of motivation, and all of that stuff. So listening to your body is quite key. And yes, you can chat to others about what they're experiencing, but you have a significant relationship with yourself. You know if something is out of sorts or something's abnormal, and sometimes taking a recovery break is what's needed. Another example is keeping rest days. So Mondays, my rest days, I do nothing, absolutely nothing, and it's so difficult because you see everyone running, you check Strava and everyone's moving around, but just go do something else, go watch Netflix or, but keep rest days holy. Yeah. So that your body can adapt to the adaptations that you're trying to make.
And, if you kind of had limited time, if you only had like a 10-minute kind of gap to do your kind of strength and conditioning, is there a particular element of it, or is it kind of very dependent on, as you said, like where you are in that kind of training block?
Yeah. So it depends. Everything is in combination with what you're doing in your main program. So I always look at athletes, their coach's program. So if they're football, rugby, or trail runner, what is the coach doing? And then you look at how can I add value. So if the athlete says, listen, I only have 10 minutes, it's very little because you still need to do your warm-up and your cool-down as well. That's very important, guys. Please warm up. But I would say if you have minimum time, do circuit training, because you go from one exercise to the other with no rest for one set, and then you give yourself rest and then you do it again. And it's also linked to your muscular endurance, which you need for trail running, or do HIIT workouts, because you get a high intensity, and then obviously you also get the adaptation. So if time is minimal, you need to think creatively around your training program, but also not neglecting good quality technique and rest where it's needed. So I always say if you're giving 100% effort, you need 100% rest as well. But if the focus is fatigue or training under fatigue, then you need to go through that as well. But again, looking at the science, is it pain that I'm feeling or fatigue, and being able to push through that barrier.
Going back to kind of yourself personally, if I say to you, you could run with one person or have a trail run with one person, alive, dead, past, present, who are you choosing?
Yeah, I must say Courtney de Walter. Yeah. I mean, she is just such an amazing athlete, mentally strong, physically, the things that she has done already is just out of this world. And she's making history and she's making space for women in this sport. And I really look up to her. It was so nice to have her here at UTCT the 1 year. And she's so friendly and, chats to everyone and down to earth. So I'm that type of person as well. So I think if I could, chat with her going around, I don't know, I would just be like, wow, in terms of everything that she's done. She's so humble about it. So, that's someone that I really look up to.
And if you could go back and talk to yourself when you started running, but also when you kind of started with your sports science, what is that? What are you saying to yourself?
I think don't be so hard on yourself. A lot of times we feel like we have to do it like this. We have to do it by the book. We have to. What I've learned with sports science is the book is one thing, but then in terms of implementation, working with athletes or even with yourself, things happen. Women get menstrual cycles, one menstrual cycle you're flying, the next menstrual cycle you're literally dying, or you just have a lot of stress because you're in exam period or your work, and now that the book says you need to do it like this. Life happens, some athletes, they have lost a loved one, or, they're feeling the pressure of something. So the book is a guideline and it helps you in terms of sports science and principles. But I always say to my students as well, you look at the individual as an holistic being. So you need to communicate with them. It's one human being that has social pressures. He has job pressure. He has training pressure. He has anxieties about finance or I don't know, various things. So look at that person. And sometimes when a person walks into a gym or they walk into a space, then you can see their body language is not, they say, okay, what's happening? What's up? And then be flexible to change. So I think if I could speak to my younger self, I'll be like, don't be so hard on yourself. Just, sometimes you need to wing it. Sometimes you need to stop and just smell the roses and just realize that tomorrow this too shall pass, and just be kind to yourself.
And what's the most rewarding thing about the work you do?
I think when working with athletes, it's when they make their PBs, or when they make teams, or when they perform and break their physical barriers. When you are S&C, you are in a very vulnerable space with athletes because they tell you their deepest secrets. They tell you where they want to go, not necessarily telling others. So when they break through that, it's like their goal becomes your goal. And it's just so nice. Like you get goosebumps when they stand on a podium or, And then in terms of my students, for them to learn all the strength and conditioning and the fitness principles, and them training their own clients, making mistakes, acknowledging that they've made a mistake, and then move forward. I think it's such a rewarding experience. So for me, it's just fitness, health, and lifestyle can literally change someone's life. Yeah. So if in any way I can do that or instill that in others to do that, I feel like I've lived my purpose in life and my passion.
And when was the moment that you knew also that you wanted to be like a competitive runner?
On high school or?
No, your trail running.
Trail.
Yeah.
Well, I was always competitive because I did athletics. I think if you go competitive in one sport and you move over into another sport, you start off very casually. But then if you do well and you're like, okay, let me push, and see where it goes. Because if you're used to pushing your limits in one sport, naturally it just comes over in another sport. And I think it's nice to know your limits. But, if you don't know, okay, this is where I can go, let me push it. So for me, it's like an exploring phase of that. And I started out doing like farm runs just to get into the sport. And then I think my biggest one was UTCT one year where I did the 23K. I absolutely loved it, but it was, super hard and high intensity. And I was like, okay, this is something that I like. But then now looking back at the shorter distances, it's so fast. I don't know if I can do that anymore. But yeah, it was just, I think, a collective amount of events that just led to, okay, let's see and try and then push and see where it goes. So it wasn't like I went out to be competitive or, race, but just kind of exploring and seeing what you can do. And then, I loved it. Like I said, I tried the road running. It didn't stick, but the trail running, it's I actually thought, where's trail running been my whole life? Because now I did track and field for so many years, which is running around the track, and I get to explore and and my track friends, I saw them in December and they're like, wow, your 40s and stuff looks so cool, and how is it, don't you fall? And so it's really like a different sport to what I know, but a little bit more risk, I guess.
And how's that progression been, suddenly starting to get noticed, starting, like in terms of sponsorships, in terms of, people kind of recognizing you? How's that kind of been for you?
I think for me, because my foundation is in God, I remain humble. So for me, it's always what I do is what is my purpose. I'm very intentional in terms of where I spend my time and how I do it. And I like community. Our community is Steady Shakeout. So for me, it's not about being seen or being known. It's about that runner that came to Steady Shakeout and said, I ran my first 5K today, So I try and focus on what is my main purpose? What am I doing here for? If the platforms that I'm on allows me to reach others and inspire them to move, inspire them to participate in a race or enter a race. Just last night, I motivated someone to do a race. They're like, no, but I don't race. I said, it's not about racing. It's about exploring. And as a woman being out in a race setup, you feel safer because it's like there's not going to be someone in the bush, waiting for you, and you can explore. So don't race, just go and have fun, So if I can use the brands and the people that want to back me, I always say to them, listen, these are my passion projects. Can you align with this? Do you agree with me? Because I want to use it for the betterment of the sport and people, and not just for me, myself, and I, if it makes sense.
And obviously, you've recently signed with Salomon. How did that come about, and what does that kind of mean to you?
Yeah, they noticed my posts and my things and how I inspire runners to run and to move and exercise. And I think I'm a bit of a storyteller, so I say it as it is. I try to remain authentic. So if I suffered in a race, I'm going to say it, but then people relate to you and people understand, I'm not going to say, oh, it was, brilliant, it was great, but then everyone's like, oh, okay, it wasn't that hard. Even when someone posted something about the 35K, I commented, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, I think I'm very honored and privileged to be a part of a brand that backs me and what I would like to achieve with the projects that I want and initiatives. And I'm just so grateful for it.
Yeah. Do you feel the pressure now more?
No, I don't. I try not put pressure on myself, because if you put pressure, the same with my work. I've got a philosophy in life. If you put pressure on anything, you're going to start resenting it and you're going to hate it. Sometimes you have moments where that happens and you feel pressure and then you're just like, why am I doing this? You need to center yourself in terms of what is the goal that I want to achieve with this. Remember, I need to do this for this, is help others, is to do this, because then you're like, okay, let's just get out of your head a little bit. So I try to not be in a pressured situation. It's natural for us to move that way, but just recentering and saying, what is my north? What is my focus? This is what I want to do. So my word for this year is intentional. So for me, it's women and opening up doors, making women feel safe in trail running, talking about things that we don't want to talk about, educate. If we can do that, then I think it removes all pressure, if I could say.
And which other brands do you work with?
Oakley.
Is that a new thing, or have you been with them for a while?
No, I've been with them for a while. This is my second year being with them. And I think they also just believe in my philosophy in terms of what I stand for. And I think it's good to have a reason why you do stuff and then have people back you for, this is what I want to do, etc. I don't have that many, but the ones that I do have, they really, they like my initiatives and the stuff that I do. So
yeah. And before we close, give me a little bit about, Stelli's Shakeout, what your role is there, what it kind of means to you, what you get from it.
Yeah, you can already see I'm smiling. Stelli's Shakeout is, I'm one of the co-organizers with Julian and Mirko, and it's just fantastic. It is a place where people feel at home. They can just visit. You've been there already. It is so nice. Our numbers have grown significantly. On a good day, we'll probably have like 300 people. We have a big variety of people that come and join. We have older people. I'm seeing more older people coming. We have children. I saw some kids last week. We have students. We have working professionals. So it's just an all-inclusive space where all fitness levels are welcome. You have your beginners, people who walk. We've got a walking group as well. We have a run-walk group so people can transition from walking into running. And then we have the mediums and then obviously the racing snakes who are the fast ones. But I think it's just having a space where everyone can just come. Some people come there shy, they don't know who. And then afterwards, when I hear someone from engineering with a student from economics saying, oh, let's meet up and go for a run. That is what it's about. I think we just bring people together with a common interest, which is trail running, and then they can take it from there. So I think sharing the trails and having an impact on people who maybe do road, but they don't know about trail, I think it's a really nice platform that we've created. And especially for women, I would not have gotten into trail running if it wasn't for the crew structures that we have with, everyone in Cape Town and Stellenbosch, because as a woman, you don't feel safe running by yourself in the mountain. So it's nice to know there's a group and, there's a group leader, there's a sweep, everyone comes back safely. It just makes the sport more accessible. I do races just to explore. Because I know there's an aid station or there's, people, there's probably going to be someone behind me. And then you just feel like sometimes when I run in some spaces, I'm constantly looking back and afraid. Yeah. It shouldn't be like that. I lived in Europe for so long and you don't have that. But in South Africa, it is, a reality that we have.
And what is the most rewarding thing about Stelli's Shakeout that keeps you going back week on week?
People, just the people and the way they keep coming back. We've obviously got our stalwarts that's been there since the inception and the beginning of time. But for me to see someone go from running a 5K for the first time, then sending me a message, I entered my first race and this is how it was. Or sending me a message saying, listen, what hydration pack should I buy? Nutrition, what do I eat? Or I saw you had this, what do you do with this? Or, just asking for help and then them progressing in the sport. I think that really just keeps me coming back to Silly Shakeout. And yeah, just the people. They are a fantastic bunch.
We're going to chat about mental kind of resilience in trail running. What has your kind of work and your running kind of taught you about that, and how have you kind of built that up?
Mental resilience is basically when you get challenges and go through things that are really difficult. And like I said, having all these pressures of life and expectations of people and all of that on you, how do you push through? And like I mentioned, is having your north, knowing why you're doing this. What is my purpose with what I'm trying to create? And that will help you push through. So when it gets dark and when it gets difficult and you just feel like I don't know where to pull or to grab anymore, it's again realignment to, this is what I want and this is what I want to achieve. I always remind myself of my first time running a trail run. If I go up to the mast, I don't know if you know the mast in Stellenbosch, but that one technical section, I still have a fear of heights, but I couldn't get up there. And now I run up there, So it is a reminding yourself of where you were and where you are now. And then you're like, whoa, okay, I've come a long way. And that helps you push through. So don't live in the past. Don't live in the future, but live in the present. And I think that's what's so nice about trail running is I feel like it's a form of meditation because you have to focus now. Otherwise, you're going down the mountain or you're falling, you know? So that helps you with that mental resilience is to go through challenges, but you keep coming back, you keep pushing through. And I think race directors, they do it on purpose. They put all the end of the races with a downhill. So you forget about the pain and, what you endured. And then you're like, I'm never going to do this race again. And then you entering for another one because that feel good runner's high, at the end. But just understanding your why helps you to push through in terms of your mental resilience.
I love that. And closing off with the sock question, what are those two words that you'd have on your sock?
I think on my sock, because I'm very focused, so get it.
I love that.
Get it.
Brilliant.
So if you want something, go
get it.
And you must go get it, not somebody else. Don't wait for anyone to open a door, and go get it.
I love it. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming through and making time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks, guys.
Subscribe to the Trail Chasers today and ensure that you never miss an episode. And if you know someone thinking about starting trail running, share this with them. It might be the nudge they need to join you.